I'm good.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, and you'd like to welcome council and staff and those online to the 82nd meeting of the 7th Council of Municipality of South Dundas. The main purpose of today's meeting is to work our way through the water wastewater budget for 2021. So roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Mayor Byvelds,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Here.
Councillor Lewis,
Here.
Councillor Mellon,
Here.
Councillor Wells,
Here.
CAO Garrity, here, Clerk Brunt,
Here.
Treasurer McMillan,
Here.
Director of Environmental Services Watson,
Here.
Manager of Water and Wastewater Dennis Villeneuve,
Here.
and Deputy Clerk Mason.
Here.
And Deputy Clerk Robert is here.
Okay, thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof for this meeting?
I declare a conflict of interest for the campground due to I was the general contractor.
Okay, that's for the closed session. Councillor Wells.
Sorry.
Okay, any other disclosures from any other member of council? Seeing none, we'll move on to discussion items, and I'll turn the meeting over to the treasurer to start discussion on the water wastewater budget for this year. Sarah?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm going to give a brief overview of the budget being presented today, and then Danielle will take over presenting each of the individual budgets in more detail. So we have 4 separate budgets to discuss today. First is water for Iroquois and Morrisburg. In this budget, we're proposing a $15 per month increase to the water flat rate, along with the 23-cent increase per cubic meter to the water capital levy. This was discussed previously to help fund the debenture for the water tower rehab project. Also, the federal government announced in March that we're receiving a doubling of our gas tax allocation for 2021. So the estimated allocation for South Dundas is just over $330,000. We've included that amount in the water budget to be allocated towards the repairs needed on Carmen Road. This only would cover a portion of the dollars needed for that project. So the money, it would be transferred to reserves and rebudgeted in 2022 when the project is planned to go forward. Next is wastewater for Morrisburg and Iroquois, starting with Morrisburg, which has the most significant proposed changes. In the 2021 budget, we have the Dutch Meadows pumping station, which is projected to cost just over $1.2 million with the construction and engineering. The proposed water rate increase would increase the wastewater rate as well. Currently, Morrisburg pays 75% of the water flat rate and consumption as wastewater charges. We are proposing moving this to 100% to match Iroquois. This budget also includes a proposed loan from the RSL reserve funds of just over $388,000 to help fund the pumping station. You'll notice that we have not included leveraging any more funds from Infrastructure Ontario to pay for the pumping station. We can discuss this further when we talk about this budget in more detail, but the short version is our debt levels are getting really high, and we need to be very careful and give considerable thought as to whether the municipality should assume more debt at this time. For Iroquois wastewater, like Morrisburg, the increase to the flat rate in water will increase the wastewater rate by the same amount as Iroquois is at 100%. And finally, for the Williamsburg wastewater budget, we're proposing a $5 per unit increase to the rate. Does council have any questions at this time?
Any questions and concerns from council at this time? Seeing none, go on, please.
Okay, I'll now pass it over to Danielle, and she can do the more detailed overview of the budgets.
Okay, thank you. Danielle?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So I'm just going to share my screen similar to how we did budget with the tax base. So just hold on 1 second here. I will share my screen. So I'm not sure, Mayor, how you'd like to proceed. We can stop at any time for questions. I'm going to give a brief presentation, and Dennis is also on the line to answer any operational questions that council may have.
And my suggestion is if you got it split into sections, then let's do section at a time. I can't see all of council at this time, so for them to, they'll just have to record their questions and we can answer them. But if it goes by section, at least we got it split up, please.
Yep, we can certainly stop after each section. So the first section that we're going to look at here is water. So this is just a brief overview of the Environmental Services Department. So in the water budget, as Sarah discussed, we have water treatment, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection. And in wastewater treatment, we have a plant in Morrisburg and a plant in Iroquois. So this is how this budget is kind of broken down. So to begin, we'll start with water treatment. It's, I believe, the first section of your budget package. So in water treatment, we have 4 goals this year in 2021. So the first goal, of course, is to continue to invest in water treatment infrastructure and setting aside funds and applying for grants where applicable. Our plan is to utilize funding to continue to replace aging infrastructure to ensure the proper treatment and distribution of water. Our second goal is to improve existing distribution infrastructure. So this is something council is well aware of. Our water distribution infrastructure is aging. So what we plan to do is utilize the asset management program that finance is currently working on developing to identify the age of underground infrastructure and then complete a condition assessment on all that infrastructure to address what lines need to be refurbished and maybe which lines need to be replaced and schedules associated with those lines. We did discuss with council about Carmen Road service line, so that'll be discussed further on in this budget. That is one of the largest mains that we look to address in 2021, 2022. And then of course, we are also completing the water tower refurbishment. So that's a huge growth in our infrastructure. So that's something we hope to achieve by the end of 2021. Our third goal is to ensure the delivery of a financially feasible service. So you'll see later on in this presentation, we are proposing to complete a water rate study to look at water rates to ensure financial feasibility over the next 20 years. So instead of continuously adjusting water rates to meet the needs, we would look at what, based on the condition assessment of underground infrastructure, what we need for distribution as well as what we need for treatment moving forward. That would help us develop a rate structure for our residential, commercial, and industrial water users and make sure that our residential users aren't paying for the needs of our industrial and commercial, and likewise on the other side of things. And we'd also use that condition assessment, like I said, to determine a financially responsible rate structure. And then the fourth goal would be to continue to plan for development and demand. So this is something that's extremely important in water distribution and water treatment. Of course, we're right next to the St. Lawrence, so a lot of people assume that we'll never run out of water. And while that may be true, we do have to always prepare for demand increase. So we will be looking to complete a 20-year demand study. We have applied for funding for this, and it would be part of our water rate study review, is to look at what South Dundas's demand requirements are for the next 20 years, and if we can help any neighboring municipalities or industrial businesses with their demands for water. As part of this, we would redevelop and consolidate the water use bylaw. It is a fairly large document, so we're hoping to condense it and make it more readable and easy to address everyone's concerns. And then we are also looking to complete a topographic study on the Morrisburg-Iroquois transmission line and look at the demand on the transmission line and determine if that needs to be a distribution line or a transmission line. So when you look at water treatment and distribution operations, so this is a brief overview of the budget. And if you have questions specific to the budget, we can address them after we're done these next few slides. So for the operating budget, we are seeing an increase in revenues of about 2.3 million compared to 2020. And this is mainly just due to transfers from the reserve, the loan that we're getting for the water towers, an increase in revenue, and then some increase from grants from the government. Staffing levels, so we are not proposing to increase or change any of our staffing levels at the water treatment or distribution side of things. We do have one overall responsible operator that we would have for water treatment and water distribution, one manager, and then one OIT or level 1 in water treatment and water distribution. With regards to sampling, there is a small increase in the budget for sampling this year that council will note, and this is an increase specific to algal bloom sampling. So this is a mandate by the Ministry of Environment. We have to sample for algal bloom. That's due to cyanobacteria. If that gets into the water source, it can be, it's actually quite lethal. So it's something that we need to sample for as part of our mandate by the ministry. Under repairs and maintenance, you'll notice there's not an increase proposed this year, but some of the projects that we are looking at completing are, improving our SCADA. We always have to make changes to SCADA as we grow our distribution system or change our distribution system. We have to do some vibration testing. We do need a new tower level sensor. That sensor basically works by telling us how much water is within the tower. We also need a 10-inch actuator and a vacuum valve actuator. And if you have specific questions about that, we can address those later with Dennis. The hydrant program. So in 2021, we are looking to replace 3 hydrants. And with those hydrants, we're looking to install new flags on the hydrants and also do some maintenance and repairs. One of the largest maintenance things we need to do is update the colors of the bonnets. So over the summertime, we will be painting all the bonnets according to the size. And then with regards to miscellaneous expenses, council will note that there's some increases in legal fees. Obviously, there's an increase in loan repayments due to the towers, and then also just a small increase for our alarm system and communication equipment. And that's just because we need some new sensors put in for the alarms. So moving to water treatment distribution capital. So this section is looking at all of our capital projects this year that we're proposing. So the first, as council is well aware, is the refurbishment of the 2 water towers. So there's the one in Morrisburg and the one in Iroquois. So the total cost for this project was $2.2 million. The procurement method was tender. We are using RSL money and Infrastructure Ontario loan. It's already been awarded, as council's aware, to JDCMI, and the project completion date is estimated to be October 31st of 2021. So we're hoping to have this project completed and both towers back online by the end of October. And the purpose of this is to perform repairs and installation of drain pipes, perform localized repairs and steel removal, redo the coatings and cathodic protection inside the towers, and then repaint and reapply the South Dundas logos. So not just Iroquois, but also Morrisburg. The second capital project we're proposing in the water treatment and distribution category is an artificial topographic study of the water line, the transmission line between Morrisburg and Iroquois. So this is estimated to be about $15,000. This would be a sole source funded through the water rates. We haven't begun the procurement process for this. It is pending budget approval. Completion date, we're hoping to have this completed by the end of August. Project description. So the study of the water transmission line along County Road 2 is important because it needs to outline how many properties would be able to connect to the main transmission line. This will determine if the transmission line needs to be reclassified as a distribution line. So normally transmission lines do not allow residential or industrial or commercial connections directly to them. Usually there's a distribution line that comes off of a transmission line to feed those properties. So in South Dundas, we haven't been following that. So it's something that we are having this study look at. This study will also determine if a redundant line is required. So currently we only have one direct method of getting water from Morrisburg to Iroquois. If something were to happen to that transmission line, for example, if a new residence was built and a connection was completed and that line was fractured and led to some issues, we could have issues getting water from Morrisburg to Iroquois. So this study is going to look at that as well and determine if we need perhaps a a redundant line in the form of a distribution line, or if there's something that can be done to limit the amount of individuals on the transmission line. The next capital project we're proposing is the non-revenue water study. So this looks at flow analysis leaving the water treatment facility versus how much revenue we're collecting. So this is estimated to be about $15,000. This would also be a sole source funded through the water rates. And again, it's waiting for budget approval. The project completion date on this is a little bit later. It's December 31st. And that's because we need to wait for the towers to be completed to complete this study. So there are 3 phases to this project. And the whole idea is to determine how much flow is leaving the plant and how much money we're receiving for that flow. So what it's looking at is reviewing our flow meters, how they're operating, and then also reviewing our customer water meter information, and making sure that those things are matching and they're up to date and they're functioning correctly. It's also going to look at our water use by operations staff and municipal staff, so how our other departments are paying or utilizing water from the water treatment plant. Because the water treatment plant is operated through water and wastewater rates and not the tax base, they are 2 different fees. So looking at how we manage that funding. It's also going to collect distribution system data, so looking at the age of pipes, the size of pipes, what the condition they may be in. Collect financial data, so looking at all our billing information and looking at how much revenue we're making every year, and then looking at a water balance. So the water balance is, and it's illustrated in the picture below for council, is how much water is produced, how much water is billed, and then that will determine how much revenue we're losing. So it's called non-revenue water. And that's a real big issue in municipal water systems is we're producing all of this water, we're treating all this water, and we're spending quite a bit of money on making sure the water is good to drink. However, we're losing it somewhere in the system when we could be saving all of that money by fixing some issues. So this first phase is to develop measures to reduce non-revenue water. And then phase 2 of this project, which would be proposed in 2022, would be the implementation of those measures to reduce non-revenue water. The third capital project we're proposing, and it's not necessarily a capital project this year, it's actually a contribution to the reserve. So we're looking to actually complete this project in 2022. So this is the Carmen Road water distribution line reline. So council is aware of how the Carmen Road water service line is in disrepair and needs to be repaired. And so we are currently looking at options for that. We will bring those options back to council. That's why the budget is estimated at the top at 1.2 million. Again, that's an estimate and it depends on the option council selects once those options are further defined by EBB through a Class A estimate. So we're looking at funding half of this project in 2021 and funding the second half of the project in 2022 through a reserve contribution. The project completion date we're looking to have though for this line is May 2022. And again, the project description just for council's knowledge is to reline Carmen Road distribution line either from gate valve 95 to 120 or from gate valve 113 to 120. So you'll see there 2 different sizes. So, you have 1,400 meters on one and then 560 meters on the other. So that'll be the cost difference there. Once council gets the Class A estimate back from our engineer, we can tender out the selected option in late 2021 with the reline occurring in 2022. So this is just a slide that looks at our water reserve contribution this year. So the total contribution to water reserve is $720,000, $50,000 for the xenon filter, $25,000 for carbon, $10,000 for pumps, $25,000 for the pipe building, $10,000 for a distribution lift station meter system, which council can see is the bottom picture of the little stainless steel box. The purpose of the lift station meter system is to calculate how much bulk water is leaving the facility, and then also allow users to pay directly at that station. So it would work. It would take credit card or debit, and it would charge the user as they use the water, similar to how a gas station utilizes credit card and debit at the pump. And then, as we spoke about in the previous slide, the 600,000 for Carmen Road water service line is within that water reserve contribution. So looking at how these how this will impact the water bill. So all these items, of course, cost money. So the average water bill will be increased by $15, and that's an increase to the flat water rate per month. So there is an annual increase. So this increase wouldn't apply until June. And then there's also a capital levy increase of 0.23 cents per meter cubed, and that's to begin in June. Our plan as a department is to communicate the water bill increase with an insert that we can put in the May bill for customers, notifying them of the change being applied in June so that they can prepare for that. And that brings us to the end of the water section. So I don't know if anybody has any questions now that Dennis or myself can answer.
If you take that screen down now.
Yep, of course. Yep. There we go.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor Byveld. Thanks, Danielle, for the presentation. Just a quick question. The communication plan, does it involve more than just letting people know that there's going to be an increase? Like, are you going to be sharing some of the information? I think we need to get a little bit more robust with our communication plans. People just assume sometimes that council just likes to raise things just because it's what we do. And I think it'd be really important to have the explanation of why we're doing things, when we're doing things, that type of thing. It'll take a little bit of work, but I think the communication plan needs to be something more than just the rates going up.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it is the plan. If this is how council would like to proceed, we would meet with our communications coordinator and discuss how that communications plan would roll out. We are looking at doing further education for our water users at the same time. So I don't know if council had the opportunity to view the video that was recently completed about World Water Day and how the water system operates in South Dundas.
Good.
So we're hoping to do some more things like that to help explain why these increases are necessary and why the items underground that maybe our ratepayers don't see every day are failing, and what they look like and what they need to look like.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at doing some education, and then also some education on, how to conserve water, how to be more efficient with your water use, because our users do pay by the cubic meter. So if they're looking to reduce their bill, there are ways that we can certainly provide some tips on how they can do that.
Okay, so I thought the video was excellent, and it got a lot of positive feedback. What I am hearing time and time again, though, is we do have apparently a large segment of the population in South Dundas that is not on social media and actually is not picking up the paper. I had assumed that there was a large group that would get their information from the newspaper. So you're going to hear me say time and time again, because if they don't know the 5 W's of why we're doing something, including the fact that council is legally responsible personally for things around safe drinking water, I think that needs to be put out there. Whether it's an email list that people can voluntarily put their email address in and we can send them these little blips, or your paper handout or something. I think for me anyway, we need to get fairly aggressive in our communication plan, because communication is key for anything. And I think that you do an excellent job of presenting the information to us, but it's not getting out to the next level. And I think that if you can be fairly robust with that, I think that's a vitally important part of not just this, but some of the other bigger projects that we're doing as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, before we go on, I'll just add that I think Deputy Mayor Gardner has a good point on communication. There's actually a simple answer. We actually send out physical bills every 2 months. You put that information in there, and just like any other utility company informs people of rates and why they're going up. And, you know, if they still have questions, they can come back and see the video or do something else. But to me, bill inserts are a pretty simple solution to what I believe also is a very necessary item, that people know why rates are going up and do not have to contact us or staff on why. Most of the information will be there. Council Wells, any comments, questions, concerns over anything?
I was just, you took care of that, Mayor. I was just to say about the bill inserts, and I agree with Deputy Mayor. Like, our communication, like, most times before we put the rates up, and I think we're getting to that point where this council, we're spending a lot of money because we have to, our infrastructure and everything, and people aren't aware of what it costs to get things done. So, like, again, we gotta get it out to them, whether it's inserts, paper, media, whatever. And yeah, I agree with the mayor and deputy mayor on that. So we just got to get it out to them so they're not calling us, because, you know, once they see that $15 rate, it'll be a call like, why? And I'm sure now with the staff and everyone's on the same page to get stuff out there. And like Deputy Mayor said, Danielle, you do a great job representing, like saying, getting to us. So I think once we do it with the public, the way we get it presented to us, it'll be an easy transition to do these increases. Thank you.
Council Lewis?
No, I have to agree with everybody on board. I know that sometimes council do get phone calls about concerns of things going up, and I don't think the message is getting out there to the people, and I think that's a good idea. I know we get our wastewater bill every month, and I don't think it would be a problem to put a slip of paper in there stating why we have to put the rates up, and that will most likely save council a lot of phone calls, and most likely save the office a lot of phone calls. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council Mellon?
Yeah, I agree with what has been said about the communication part of it. There's a couple things here. On the water line, there's a couple of, you've mentioned, Danielle, that are going to be sole sourced. The water line, and there was another one. Why are we sole sourcing those? Sorry about the phone.
No, that's okay. So there are a few that are sole source. So for example, the non-revenue water study is sole source because there is a company that has put together a proposal for us that is within the budget that we already had in mind. And they have a specific phased-in approach that they use to identify non-revenue water. And they're a fairly well-known company within the water industry. Their name is Xylem. I don't know if council has heard of them, but they do a significant amount of work on water studies within municipalities. The second sole source was the Carmen Road, and that's just because our engineering services, we use the engineer EVB to do a lot of our water system. They're very familiar with the system already, and they've actually done a lot of work on our water system for us. So in order to get a timely estimate and one that is accurate without us having to do a significant amount of work, we are sole sourcing just the Class A estimate. So the actual $1.2 million work, so the tender itself would not be sole source. That would go out for tender for individuals to bid on. So the engineer isn't getting $1.2 million to do the work. We're paying them a small amount from the amount that we're putting aside this year to complete the Class A estimate, because there is a cost associated with the Class A estimate. So to clarify, that is only the engineering is being sole sourced. The rest would go out for public tender.
Okay, yeah, thank you on that. The RSL, I guess, loan of $388,000 and
That,
change.
Council Mellon, that'll be in the sewer part, so let's concentrate on the water start first, and then we
Okay,
can deal with that loan part after. Please.
Okay, I can live with that. The federal gas tax, the increased allocation we're going to get. I realize that the Carmen Road pipe needs to be replaced, but in my mind, I guess when I look at that federal gas tax, that's supposed to be going to projects, not just in one area. As much as we need to spend that, and we need to keep our borrowing down, I just have a little bit of an issue with us getting extra gas tax money, and we're going to put it in our water distribution system, I guess, if you will. That's, you know, I do have a little bit of an issue with that. You know, it's give or take on that one. So yeah, I realize, you know, the overall borrowing that we would have to do if we didn't include that 333,000, you know, increases it quite a bit. But and one other thing on your screen, and of course I don't have a water bill, and on your screen you had the water bill up there with the proposals that we are looking at, and I couldn't see the bill good enough. What would the increase be on the average residential home with the increases that we're proposing? What would that hit be?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be $15 on every bill every month for water. It's a flat fee increase, so it's
Yeah.
not tied to the water consumption.
So what
But
about,
let's say for the capital levy charge, so the average use is 15 cubic meters, and the capital levy would be 23 cents. So that would be, you know, a $3.45 increase. So it's not a huge jump for the capital levy increase, but the $15 is the flat rate. So they would pay that increase regardless of how much water that they would be using.
okay, the pumping station,
Pumping station's the next part, Councilor
okay.
Mellon.
I'm jumping ahead of myself.
You got a lot of notes, and we have to do it by sections, or else we'll be
Yeah.
all in a knot.
Okay.
And we can tie it up in a bow because it is one budget, but I mean,
Yeah.
let's keep it to where it is, please.
Okay, pipe building that you're proposing in the capital, the 25,000 for the pipe building, what do we have right now, or what do we use right now?
I'll let Dennis speak to that. Dennis, are you on the line?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so on the pipe building, we've been putting the money away the last year for the budget, and then this year, right now the pipe building down on Allison Drive is in really bad shape. It's falling over. So what we're looking to do is keep putting the money away for this until we have enough money to purchase a pipe shed building, and you know, it'll probably be, we're guessing, in the $100,000. So we'll budget for this for the next 2 years.
Okay, so Dennis, you're putting 25,000 away each budget year to
That's
get up
correct.
to that amount. Oh, okay, all right, I
That's-
just wanted to get, okay, clarification.
Yeah, we did
on
it.
that.
We did it last year's budget and as well as this year's budget. So
Well, that's what I was my mind was racing back to what we did last year, and I was trying to think what was I missing here? Okay, that's all for right now, Mayor Byvells, I think.
Okay. So circling back to capital, is there any issues besides Councilor Mellon's issue with sole sourcing, and that was explained? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor Byvelds. The only thing is with the capital and with the I think it's 3 studies that we're doing. I'm just wondering for Dennis or Danielle, if we I was interested in the non-revenue water study that we're going to do. If we do that ahead of doing some major repairs, like do the 2 the two impact each other? So I'm wondering about timelines as we roll this out, because if I'm sitting on the next council, I'm just picturing all these reports coming back and just how overwhelming, because some of them are going to be very expensive to at the end, the suggested projects. And I'm just wondering, we're going to be doing all these studies, but are they in the right, like the non-revenue water study sounds, I know it will probably justify why we need to do the main line and all that fun stuff, but I'm just wondering if some of these are out of order when we're looking at capital projects, because the council of the day is going to be completely overwhelmed with, all these big money projects again. And I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of a timeline planned out or something like that.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I can take that one and Dennis can jump in if he has something to add. So the idea would be for the non-revenue water study to occur before we do the water rate study. So the water rate study that was proposed is actually coming from funding from efficiency funding, if we get that efficiency funding. So we wouldn't be completing that water rate study unless we get that funding. The non-revenue water study would be completed right after we refurbish the towers. And that's not just looking at the Carmen Road servicing line, that would be looking at our system in Morrisburg as well. So what that's going to do is identify where we're losing water and how much we're losing. So that will help us understand, for example, how much water we're losing to leaks perhaps, or if there's a bypass happening at a residence or a commercial business or an industrial business, because that information will help us set a rate study. So the last thing we want to do is complete a rate study. So redo all the rates based on the water leaving the water plant when half the water, for example, I'm not saying it's half, but half the water is actually being lost within the system, or someone stealing 25% of the water, because that's not fair to the ratepayers. So we would need that information before we start the water rate study. However, we did apply for the water rate study in 2021 just because the efficiency funding was available. The other study we're doing, which is that topographic study, which is along the transmission line between Morrisburg and in Iroquois. So that is just a study that we need to complete to address whether or not that line should be a transmission line or a distribution line. And it's not, that study is not really going to indicate anything to council other than we need to make this a distribution line, or we need to make this we can leave it as a transmission line with 10 extra houses being added, or if we're going to add houses to it, these are the precautions we need to have when adding those houses. So I would say the topographic study is on its own level of importance, and then the rate study and the non-revenue water would need to be completed in sync, like you said. So we would do the non-revenue first and then the rate study to make sure that we're accounting for water loss in the system.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, because it's just I don't want to waste the consultant money and not have, so thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Anything else from any other members of council? Council Wells?
Yeah, Danielle, that topographical one we're going to be doing, as we know, we already committed to Dutch Meadows. Is that going to be, like, there's 176 units, I believe, or 171 units going in there. So what's this study or the going to do with this? Because we're already approved that they're going to hook into this. So where's this study going to come into play with that, unless you guys took that into account?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll let Dennis jump in here too. So that is not connected to the transmission line. So that Dutch Meadows would be fed through a distribution line system. We're looking at houses that are connected directly to the transmission line. So for example, there's a house just outside of Doran Creek that is connected directly to the transmission line. Council's aware of that because you approved the connection to occur. So we're looking at things like that. So Dutch Meadows would not be part of the topographic study. I don't know, Dennis, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to is part of off of the transmission line, but we do have, it's going to be looped through Stewart Drive. So we we're getting water from Stewart as well as the transmission. But what we need to know is if we can put 100 homes on this or 50 homes moving forward, or if an industry comes in, or, you know, these numbers we got to, because all of a sudden I don't want to have in 10 years and say, oh, you added 50 homes and Iroquois aren't able to take enough water because there's so much water being used from Morrisburg to Iroquois. So we need to know what numbers or how much cubic meters are being used.
Yeah, we lost Dennis. Danielle, you can continue on. I think he may come back.
Okay, so just to jump in for Dennis, sorry, we lost him there. What I would say is basically what we don't want to happen, Councillor Wells, is like Dennis was saying, we have, you know, say we have another development that goes in between Iroquois and Morrisburg with another 170 homes. And that's where we're talking about that redundant line. So we only have one line, and what is the capacity of that line to sustain Iroquois and also sustain any potential development on that line? Is it 10 houses? Is it 20 houses? Is it 150 houses? Once we know that limit, we can start setting out what can go there. And then, you know, if we have a proposal for development, say we have another Dutch Meadows, for example, say we have an additional 170 homes, we'll be able to determine if we need to start saving for an additional line, or if we need to perhaps enlarge our transmission line, or this study would show us what we need to do for development along that corridor to make sure that Iroquois, the pressure maintains itself in Iroquois and the Iroquois residents still receive the water that they're paying for. Hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Yeah, Danielle, like I understand that. I just thought instead of a study, like if we're basically it's mathematics, right? We got a 16-inch thing. We're doing things by volume. But apparently, like if we need a company to do that, which we probably do, like there's different things. But I thought it was just okay. Each house used so much, we just do the volume of the 16-inch line going. And but anyways, no, that's good, Danielle. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Council Lewis, Council Mellon? Okay, just a couple comments. First comment is that along with that water study, as some council know, and it's knowledge out there in North Dundas. North Dundas, especially in the Winchester area, is planning a major expansion of residential units. However, they're in a challenge looking for water. They are basically out of water. So they are looking at new sources of water, and we in South Dundas are part of that study. They have had preliminary talks with our CAO and our water staff concerning hooking into our water system from the plant going forward. So we do need to know from a 20-year study what we need before we can offer them more water. But it is a long-term project if it even happens. So right now we do have the capacity in theory to handle what their ask is. And it would require a transmission line from Morrisburg Distribution Center all the way out to Winchester Hub. So just to let council and public know that these things are happening. They're still not anywhere near reality. However, if they do go down reality, then we as council will need to figure out our role and what we need to do to ensure that our water users are looked after first, and thereafter certainly entertain selling water to North Dundas if that works out. The other question I had is for the fire services, especially since we're the water distribution system is paying for hydrants. So so Dundas South South Dundas Fire pay for the right for A, the water they use, and B, anything into hydrants, because the hydrants are for their use. And if we're having a South Dundas Fire Department, that can go and use that water and it goes anywhere and everywhere, then we need to be fair to users on who pays what.
So I'll let Sarah answer the question about the fire department paying for water. And historically, Mr. Mayor, we have paid for hydrants in the water budget. So I'm not sure on the contribution from the fire department to the water department. So I'm wondering if Sarah can address that, please.
So we haven't billed the fire department for the water that they use. We have talked about it with the fire chief, but it's not a practice that we currently do. If it's something we do implement, then we could be billing it to the, I guess, people who have had the fire, and then their insurance would pay for that water usage. I know Dundas does record the amount of water that they do take from the plant.
Okay, maybe part of that water leakage study could be part of it, because technically that's part of the water that's disappearing. That's non-billable water. And in the end, if you want to be extremely fussy about billable water, then that needs to be at least accounted for in one way or the other. And I do believe that if it comes to that, then you can make recommendations to council. I kind of disagree with some of your thinking, but I think we need to have a council report on who pays for what. Because of the water, if the water truck is filled up and it goes to a fire anywhere in South Dundas, then, then the fire department is the one that should be billed for it. We can question who pays for water, because we do not charge for sending pumpers out and stuff like that. You're crossing fine lines there in my books, but I think that would be at least part of that water study, and we can figure out after that what we're going to do. I'm not going to change the world today, but we have to be fair to those. If we're going to be very fussy on how we're going to bill water, then that's one of the first things we have to do. Okay, everybody good with the water budget as it is presented? Okay, then we'll move on to the wastewater side, and we'll start with well, we can talk about both plants, but there's some specifics in both systems that, because they are treated as separate systems, we will deal with Williamsburg last because of its small nature and probably least discussion. So Danielle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So how this is set up is exactly like your budget package. So we'll start with wastewater as a whole. So as council knows, there are obviously two wastewater systems. So however, as a wastewater kind of department, as part of the water department, we do have some goals for wastewater as well in 2021. So again, goal 1 is to continue to invest in wastewater treatment infrastructure. So again, similar to water treatment infrastructure, we want to continue to set aside funds and apply for grants where applicable to improve existing infrastructure, and then utilize the funding to replace what we need to replace. We're looking to improve existing collection infrastructure. So that's the infrastructure that collects the sewage from homes and from businesses. And again, utilizing the asset management software that the finance department has been working on to create. And then again, applying the condition assessment of that infrastructure and determining a timeline or schedule for what needs to be replaced or refurbished. Another thing that we're looking to do is complete some relining. Council's aware that we were doing relining in Iroquois in 2020 and again in 2021, and we'll discuss that in the budget. And we're also looking at beginning to reline sewer collection pipes in Morrisburg. Our third goal is to, of course, ensure the delivery of financially feasible service. So again, we're looking to raise rates to ensure complete financial recovery for new infrastructure in the year it's constructed. We can discuss that later. Complete a sewer rate study. So this is goes hand in hand with the water rate study. Again, making sure that we're financially feasible over the next 20 years on the rates that we're putting in place. And then, of course, relying on that condition assessment to tell us what we need to replace in the next 20 years. And then our fourth goal, again, is to continue to plan for development and demand. So like I said before, Similarly to water, we also have to be careful with how much sewage we're collecting. Our plants can only hold so much capacity, and our collection system can only carry so much. So, we're looking at redeveloping and consolidating the sewer use bylaw. I'm hoping to have that done this year for council's review. I know that's something that we've been working on for a while and is extremely important when we consider sewer overflows and backups that happen because our systems are tied together here. And then we also are looking at determining the discharge into the Williamsburg Lagoon by installing a flow meter, and we'll discuss that when we get to the Williamsburg budget. So with regards, we'll start with Morrisburg wastewater treatment to begin with. So the Morrisburg wastewater treatment and collection operations, just a brief overview again for council. We are seeing an increase in revenues about 832,000. That's a combination of increase in rates, loans, contribution from reserves. With regards to staffing levels, we're not suggesting any increases to staff. Again, we have one overall responsible operator, a manager, and a level 1 or OIT operating in those plants. So those are shared between the two facilities we have. So we do have one in Morrisburg and one in Iroquois. Sampling, there's no changes to our sampling schedule or fees for sewer in 2021, which is good. Repairs and maintenance. So there isn't a real increase to this section. However, some of the projects we're planning on working on, and again, Dennis can speak to this if you have questions, are, we're looking at doing some SCADA work similarly to water. Every time we do a small change in sewer, we do need to do some SCADA work. Our SCADA system helps us become aware if there's an issue with the system. It alerts us to any issues with pumps or flows or backups that are happening within the plant. So adjustments in SCADA are necessary every year. UV maintenance, so we need new cards for our UV. UV treats the outflow, so the UV system is to degrade the bacteria in the septage and the sewer before it goes out into the St. Lawrence. We need mass unit replacements, UV motherboard. So of course, with a UV card replacement, we need UV motherboards, and then 2 mix pumps. For line repairs and maintenance in Morrisburg, we're looking at, this is a budget that we carry every year and we're not increasing it. We're not suggesting to increase it. So this is just when we need to replace a line from a main. So for example, if you own a home, the first couple feet are actually owned by the municipality and then the rest is owned by the homeowner. If the homeowner finds a collapse within our side, that's something that we can reline or fix, we do, and that comes out of that budget. And then miscellaneous expenses, council will note the only real increase we're seeing in the Morrisburg wastewater treatment and collection operations is an increase in chemicals. And that's just based on a tendered price that we received. We did do a conjoined or a joint tender with South Stormont for chemicals, and we did get a good price. But this is just a new tender. So it's a small increase, like I said, but still an increase nonetheless. And Dennis can speak to that if you have any further questions when we get to that point. With regards to Morrisburg wastewater treatment and collection capital, there are a few projects that we're doing this year. So the largest project we're doing is the construction of a sanitary pumping station for Dutch Meadows. The total cost, as council knows, this was brought to council, I believe last month, was $1.2 million. It was tendered out. We're proposing to fund this through RSL money and sewer rates. The status is it's already been awarded to David Brown Construction. We've had 2 site meetings with them already, so progress is starting. The project completion date is August 31st of 2021, and after that point, if they're not completed, there is liquidated damages. The description of this project, council is well aware. Obviously, we're supplying and installing a new pumping station. We're supplying and installing a new water main across County Road 2 and installing a new force main from the sanitary pumping station to the existing sanitary sewer. The second capital project that we're proposing is sewer lateral relining and replacement. So similarly to how we're doing this in Iroquois, currently this is what we're looking to do in Morrisburg. So this will be through tender. It'll be funded through sewer rates, and obviously we haven't begun this because we were looking for council to approve it through budget. We're hoping to have 5 sewer lines done by December 31st of 2021. So this is a small project. It's unlike the Iroquois one, this one is not funded by the federal government. So we're just looking at doing small amounts of pipes every year. So there will be lines that need to be relined, and then we'll reline them as required. And we're hoping to have those 5 lines, like I said, done by December 31st. So the contribution to the Morrisburg Wastewater Reserve. So we're looking to contribute $65,000 to the Morrisburg Wastewater Reserve for the following items. So we have a pump program, and the reason we have a pump program is in case one of our pumps fails, we can pull from the reserve as needed for pumps. So we're looking at adding another $25,000. A sure feed system for $5,000. Again, that's part of a build-up process towards if we need to replace it, and connection fees of $35,000. So what does this mean for the sewer bill? So there will be a sewer bill increase in Morrisburg. So as Sarah alluded to earlier, the sewer bill will be increased to match the water bill. So currently in Morrisburg, only 75% of the water bill is allocated towards sewer. We're looking to match the water bill to the sewer bill at 100%, similarly to what Iroquois currently pays. The sewer bill, because the water bill is increasing, will automatically increase that $15 due to the flat rate. And again, the communication plan for the sewer bill increase, as we discussed with the water rate increase, is to insert something in the May water bill for customers to notify them of the change being applied in June. So that'll go in the May bill and outline why we're looking to increase that. So I don't know if you want me to stop here, Mayor, or you want me to continue into Iroquois wastewater.
I think we should stop there. I think there's some big things to talk about on that one. So.
Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen, and then you should be able to see council.
Okay, good. Comments, questions, concerns, Mayor Gardner?
Okay, so I always look at things, it's funny, increases, I always connect it to buying a bag of milk. I was a single mom a long time ago, and when I look at this, so a Morrisburg resident is now looking at a $30 increase a month when you combine water and sewer, and if they're on both, when you combine the water and the sewer.
I can let Sarah speak to that, but I believe that's correct, plus the capital levy increase based on their usage. That's correct.
Okay. So that I think that has staff looked at a gradual roll in with this stuff. I'm thinking of some of the families that live. I don't know why it was at 75%. I'm sure the mayor is going to give us some background on that, but I just I look at things through a bag of milk, and an average family that has kids, that's a lot of milk. And 6 bags in the month, that's roughly, depending where you buy your milk. That is going to be a hard, and I know we have to do this, and I know it's been put off for a long time, but I just, that $30 increase is a month is going to hit people really, really hard. I have some questions around that, but if the mayor's okay, I'll just kind of stop there and listen to any information that's dispersed around the table. But that's a hard one for me.
Sarah, any comments?
No, Danielle was correct with how the increases would work. So like right now, Morrisburg is at 75%. So it would be the $15 per month for water. And then I think it's $11.25 for sewer, but we're proposing 100%. So it would be $30.
So the history on the 75% was because the Morrisburg system was costing more, but had more users. We didn't have to charge as much per user, so you had the effect of more bodies within it compared to the Iroquois system, which had significantly less users. But similar cost, but a little bit less. So at that time, it was a way of balancing the bill out that we were starting to accumulate a significant amount of reserves in the Morrisburg account. And more, excuse me, and Iroquois was floating, was at the right number, and we left it there. That was in 2014 where we had to put water rates up significantly, and it was an offset to try to deal with the overall billing of it. Apparently it still didn't go over well because that was in September, and we all know what happened in 2014. It could be changed. I'm not saying it can't be, but I think the reasons have to be the right reasons to do the change, but that's the history on it. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at this, you know, with people are going to see that it's going to be almost the old justification, because people are going to see that there's more users on the line, and we have said that, you know, growth would pay for growth. I think my feeling right now is the water treatment, I understood. The sewer, there needs to be, in my mind right now, I'm feeling that we need to be a little bit more creative in rolling this out. I think $30 hit, and I get the justification behind it, but I think it's too much of a hit. The $15 is still a big hit, but I see the justification behind it. I'm struggling with the $30. And I mean, I'm someone where I live, we have, I just have the water. I don't have the septic, or I have a septic system. But that $30, you know, that, I don't know. I'm not overly thrilled with a $30 hit. So I'll just leave that there.
Okay. Councilor Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Deputy Mayor here. The thing I would hate to see if we took that, raised the $15 for the thing and sit there and just watch our reserves go up. And that's back in the day, that's the reason it wasn't at full 100%. So I'd be a little cautious, like if we need $2 or $3, like if we actually need the $15 to have the system be paid for or whatever. But if we're just doing that to get our reserves up, I'd be a little leery and cautious, because there's a lot of businesses here too. People we got to think about, especially another shutdown. We're just going through, so you get people like over in the mall, like barbershops and stuff like that. They're getting dinged another $30, and they have no work. So I see the water towers right now because we're committed. Our sewer system is up and going. So I would think we could lay off for 1 year in that. If we needed just enough to cover costs, fine. But we got to think of the people in business too, and the residents, and the year. Like this year, and we're asking for more and more and more, which I know we need. Like we got to infrastructure, we got to upkeep stuff, but I think we have to gradually get there, especially where we're at right now. We're in another shutdown here. There's businesses out there that can't even have businesses like right now. So I think myself, I would just tend to slow down a bit on it. If we need a little bit just to cover costs, I'm good with that, but not just at this time to bring up the reserve. And I understand reserves are always healthy, but they can get too healthy too. So I'll just wait to go around, and I might have some comments later. Thank you, Mayor.
Hey, Danielle, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I'm hoping that Sarah will jump in here as well to help me out, but I just wanted to respond to Councillor Wells' comment. So the increase is not to build back up the reserves. So we will be depleting the reserve this year. And that's because of the new sanitary pumping station in Dutch Meadows. So if we do not raise the rates, there will be no reserve. So I'm hoping that I don't know if Sarah's there to talk about that, but the reason for the rate increases is not because we want to build up the reserves even more. It's kind of to pay back the reserves, so we have something in there in case something happens elsewhere. So Sarah, do you want to maybe speak to how that works?
Sure. Yeah. So how we have the budget presented right now is that we're not leveraging any more debt. So in order to pay for the pumping station, there's a few components. So it's the RSL funds. We're depleting the Morrisburg Sewer Reserve, save for $115,000, and that's for the pump program. So we're keeping that money in there, and then the remainder of it comes from the sewer rates. So we need to increase rates to pay for the pumping station, and if we don't, then we need to come up with another alternative to how we're going to fund this budget.
Okay, Council Wells, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, well, I understand that, girls, like the sewer rate, but we're also under that, we're not hitting all the ratepayers. It was sewer connections. I was understand that was offsetting the cost of this. I know you said we're getting at the point where for Ontario infrastructural borrowing, but we also have that sewer connection to pay for the pumping station. That's the way it was presented to me to start with. Now we're not, what I'm gathering, we're going to hit all the ratepayers for something that it was basically the subdivision and new hookups. That's originally why we increased before there was never a sewer connection. Now the increase was to offset because we knew this was coming. So I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. So
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, you are right. The issue is that we need money now to pay for the pumping station because it's happening this year. So eventually, as the development goes along and there's connection fees, those will go towards paying back our reserves that we've depleted to pay for this pumping station. That's kind of the theory behind it right now. Because we don't have those they haven't paid the connection fees. So we have to pay the money right now for this pumping station somehow.
and I fully understand that, but that is, we were under, when we started this thing with Dutch Meadows, I was on the assumption that we would borrow the money. Now we're asking all the ratepayers to pay for something that we originally didn't plan on having an increase. So after we get our reserve back, what are we going to do? Credit back the ratepayers? I don't know. I think, even though I know we're in debt, and part of running municipality as a business is debt. So myself, I don't think we should be hitting the ratepayers, because that's not the way this whole thing started out. What I took in, I was under, I know we don't have the money right now, but we can get it through Ontario infrastructure. But now, like, we're trying to grab the money quick again to pay for something. Well, that's not the way I thought we were going to do this. I thought we were going to borrow it and pay back on connection fees over the period of the phases that Dutch Meadows presenting to us. There's 4 phases, so hopefully in the first 3 we borrow money for 15 years, and the connection fees will pay for that, and we can, whatever. That's the way I'm looking at it, but I'm just here. So I'm going to let everyone else speak, then we can see if we can figure this out. Thank you, Mark.
Council Lewis.
I have to agree with my colleagues. The intention was to borrow the money and pay it back over a certain number of years. At our last budget meeting, we talked about the situation, the condition that South Dundas was in, and now we got a stay-at-home order, so that means the businesses that did reopen, they'll most likely closing again. Curbside assistance, which I believe that some of them won't even do that now. They'll just say, we'll close our doors up for the weekends or whatever. I understood the increase in water. I don't agree with the increase in the wastewater side. I think if you start hitting the ratepayers with a $30 a month for water and wastewater, there's people out there that's just barely surviving now. We do have, and as everybody knows, in the village of Morrisburg, in the village of Iroquois, we do have a great number of senior people and people that are on assistance. And I just, I'd rather borrow the money to do the project instead of making the taxpayers come up with that, because at this time of year, it's just the people that are surviving, they won't be surviving no more. So no, I will not agree with the increase in the wastewater of $15 a month.
Councilor Mellon, sorry.
Oh, yeah, clarify for me, in the Morrisburg Sewer Reserve right now, I'm looking at the spreadsheet. Are we looking at around 342,000 in that reserve, Sarah? Am I looking at the right numbers?
The Morrisburg Sewer Reserve, so that one has the unaudited balance as of right now is 510,000.
Okay, like, and without this increase, this $15 a month increase, making, you know, going up to the 100%, we're looking at depleting that reserve down to nothing pretty well.
To 115, provided that the transfers are approved in the 2021 budget. So that's for Dennis's, the pump program
Okay.
that we've been saving money for.
I got to agree that I think $15 hit in 1 year, taking it up to 100%. I think we need to phase. I'd much sooner see this phased in. I think it needs to go up there, but I think it needs to be phased in. And I'd much sooner take that money out of the reserves and use the, even if it depletes it dangerously low, and then the connection fees go back into the reserve to build it back up without, you know, a big hit on the users. Because that connection fee is $2,500. Is it $2,500 a home? Is that? Yeah. Five. Okay.
$5,000 right now.
5,000 each.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 5,000. Okay. Yeah, I think we got to work some numbers here to get a little bit of relief here. Do agree that, you know, a combined increase of $30, just a little too much. I think we need to get it there. I don't know, phasing that 15 on the wastewater in at $5, you know, phasing it in over 3 years or something. I don't know. That's just an idea that went through my head here. And using the money from the connection fees to go back into the reserves to build it up. I'm not sure. Yeah, you got your hand up, Danielle.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor,
wrong.
I just wanted to speak about if we use the connection fees to fund back the reserve, and maybe Sarah can jump in too here if she has anything, but the problem with that is we're not guaranteed a specific amount of houses to be connected within 1 year. So for example, Dutch Meadows could build 5 houses 1 year, and then maybe the market is really good and then they build 10, and then the following year they only build 1. The problem with replenishing the reserve with those connection fees is that if, for example, if Dennis's pump program, we deplete the entire reserve and we have no money for pumps and a pump blows, those are significantly expensive. And then we have to borrow again to replace a pump. So my concern is if we completely deplete the reserve to pay for this pumping station, we are putting the Morrisburg sewer users at risk of getting into another situation where we either have to take out a loan or we have to spike their rates regardless because we have to pay for infrastructure. So to remind council, our infrastructure here, the Morrisburg sewer plant is in good condition. It is fairly new. However, things are starting to age. So not only are our pumps aging, our UV system is aging, our collection system is extremely old. These are all things that if they fail, we have to replace them. We don't have a choice to not replace it. It's just similar to the Safe Drinking Water Act. We can't just let sewage go into the river. We would be held environmentally responsible for that. So I just want to remind council that if we deplete the entire reserve and something fails, we would have to borrow money for that, or we would have to spike rates to pay for that as well. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you're thinking about the reserve.
I agree that, that's a very realistic analysis, I guess, if you will, but I don't think Dutch Meadows is going to build one house a year. I mean, they've got way too much money to be sitting, dragging this out. They're going to want to see a return on their investment as quick as they can. No guarantee on that from our end of things. And that's why I'm thinking if we crunch some numbers to get, say, a $5 increase, whatever percentage that works out to over our water, and use the connection fees to pay back into the reserve, that'll give us, we won't have to deplete, we won't have to take as much out of the reserve. We wouldn't maybe have to use the full amount to cover the pumping station from the reserve. But that's why maybe, phasing that increase in and look at taking money from the reserve and then use the connection fees to replenish it as we move forward. It's going to be tight, and if worst comes to worst, it's not a very good way to do things maybe, but if we get stuck, do we have to borrow the money to buy a gazillion-dollar pump down the road if Murphy's Law will hold true and what will go wrong does go wrong? But that's just my thinking off the top of my head right now, Mayor Bybels.
Okay, so council's in pretty good unison on the challenge of the sewer use increase fees. And to be honest, I am not happy with them at all. I wanted council to come up with this one first, and no disrespect to any staff, but as Councillor Wells alluded to, when we went down the road of paying for the Dutch Meadows pumping station, the theory was that we would borrow the money and the connection fees would pay for that debt over time. I am strongly opposed to having the users of Morrisburg pay for this pumping station. If we as a council make a decision that we're going to support this project, fair enough. Then everybody in South Dundas puts the money into it, not just the users of Morrisburg. That is totally unfair. The users pay for what they use. That's fair. I could live with the $15 increase if it makes sense for what we need to do to operate our plants and to rebuild the capital side of our system in Morrisburg. Increasing the 75 to 100 just to pay for the pump station, I'm strongly opposed to. I understand that our debt levels are scarily high, and we have some other commitments that we need to seriously entertain because of other issues. But to turn this one around at this point is not fair to those who live in the village of Morrisburg and use the sewer system. These councils also know that we started down the path of the pump station at a certain dollar number. And that dollar number was in the 850 range, and we've prepped it up to over $1 million. And then along with engineering costs, the pump station would cost us right now $1.079 million. And then I actually added an interest cost to that over 20 years, and that was just using general rates at the time of $1.425 million. So that's real dollars that we committed to this pumping station. So in the general theory that we as a council, I have shared it with staff, so they are aware of it. So phase 1 was 5,000, phase 2 was 7,500, phase 3 would be 10,000, and phase 4 would be 10,000. The possible phase 5 would be another 10,000, and that's the land they do have the option on but do not own. That's west of the subdivision. The condos are a discussion because that's the sticky point on how they're going to deal with that. But in the end, I had enough money over 20 years to pay for everything. I understand that some of the challenge will be that it's low ended at first and more higher ended at the end. They also agreed to increasing water charges, but that's another discussion. So they're quite animal to make this thing work. So it doesn't cost South Dundas money besides the carrying costs in between. Their one stipulation though, if we go down this road, is that this will be part of the subdivision agreement and it will be for their use in writing, and we will be committing to it. I know there's some challenges to this, and I don't think we're going to make a decision firmly on this today, because I do want staff to analyze it and tell us some of the issues they see and some of the pros they see. So we may have to come up with some other way of financing this one way or the other. We can borrow, we are borrowing RSL money. If there's more there, we can do so there. We would pay it back with interest. We can deplete the reserves for this year, but we gotta be careful. And I agree with staff, you gotta have, there's nothing worse than not having enough money in for your operational use if the pump goes or something like that. So don't want to build reserves, but in the end, we got to have enough reserves to make sure that we have the rainy day funds, the operational funds, and any future funds that we anticipate having to do down the road. But I think this has got to come back with a better report to deal with how we can find the money to do this, and whether it's part reserves, part SL money, part Infrastructure Ontario money. We have to be fair to users. I will not vote for a budget that has an increase in the sewer use just for this. I will not. So, Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Thanks, Mayor Byveld. I think we should take a good, strong look at your proposal. I'm with you. I do not like the switcheroo. No offense to staff, but all our conversations have been growth pays for growth, and then all of a sudden we're telling Morseburg they're paying for it. So I like what you're saying, Mayor. I think that this will give us an opportunity to do it very similar to what we've been saying we were going to do all along. And I'm with you. I will not support a $15 take. I will also say that I appreciate the enthusiasm of the environmental department, but sometimes I feel like we're doing everything all at once. And I just want to remind the staff that this council came on board with a lot of projects that had not been completed, had not been done, and we're playing catch up in a lot of ways. And a lot of those projects were massive projects with massive price tags and quite overwhelming for me, at least. And I think that we cannot do everything all at once, but we definitely are willing to attack what needs to be done. So I'm with you, Mayor. I like that proposal. Thanks for presenting that as an option. And I would strongly agree that I want staff to have a firm look at it. And I think that's the way to go. Thank you.
Councilor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to comment about your proposal and that. And as far as I agree with staff not to deplete the reserve. We have that pump reserve in there, which Sarah addressed that we're gonna keep in there the 150,000, which we've been saving for a rainy day if a pump happens. But I have no issues of taking the rest of the reserve. And like the mayor said, we have the RSL money. It's there. It's not making us any money right now anyway, so we may as well use it to save money in the long run if you're taking about paying interest and stuff. So, and to Councillor Mellon, like, do we have to, like, we can't sit here and not pretend like there's going to be increases, whether it's this year or next year. And again, with Deputy Mayor all at once, no, that's not the way to go. But I can see a couple dollars maybe on the flat rate. Take it in over 3-4 years, whatever. Like, but we can't just sit there and say, no, it can't go up. And definitely not 15. I'm on board with everyone on that. But I think at the end of the day, with our LSL reserve, we'll get to, and the user fees, we'll get to where we have to, and not by using all the ratepayers at this moment. So that's it for me, man. Thank you.
Okay, so just to reiterate, it's just not only there's, and Sarah and Danielle can clarify this if they think I'm wrong. It's $15 is the matching one to match the increase in water. Is that correct? And then 25% extra will be the bigger hit. On how much would that extra 25% on the average user be?
It's about $4 per month.
Okay.
So.
Okay, we'll move on, Councilor Lewis.
I have to agree with you, Mr. Mayor, 110%. I think that a $30 increase is just way, way too much. Myself personally, I would borrow the money and I would leave the sewer rate for 2021 the way it is, and hope and pray that 2022 that things will have changed and we're back to normal, because as of right now we don't know when we're going to get back to normal. So I would rather borrow the money than see the ratepayers pay for something that they most likely can't. Some of them they can't afford right now. So I agree with your recommendation, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Mellon.
Yeah, good idea, Mayor Bonneville. I think, you know, you just crunch the numbers quick and, you know, at 7,500, say on the average over 170 units, and it's actually more than that, I think. If you go over the whole 4 phases, we're getting to the point where, like you said, it pays for itself. That's the idea, you know, especially using the RSL money. Yeah, so, you know, I would maybe suggest that we look at a small increase. Like I would suggest, you know, phasing in that 15 over 3 years, but maybe even Councilor Wells has already sort of said that maybe $1 or $2 more to make sure we got our butts covered in case, you know, if we take some out of the reserve or something to pay for this. But yeah, I don't think Morrisburg, you know, it's not fair to everybody else that, you know, the subdivision pumping station is going to cost them more money. Yeah, so I guess the only other thing here is, and I see this, you know, the RSL fund, reserve fund, we could discuss the payback of this loan during, so the RSL money, are we talking borrowing that money out of the RSL reserve? I was just under the impression that we're just going to utilize some of that RSL money. I really didn't think we were going to be borrowing the money out of that RSL reserve. I personally, I don't think we need to pay it back. I mean, we paid into it for a number of years. We've got this reserve built up to the point, you know, where, and you know, it's already said, you know, we're really not making a heck of a lot of money off that money sitting in there. So that'd be my only comment too, is the payback of that RSL loan. I didn't think we were going to call a loan. I thought we were just going to utilize the funds that we've accumulated over the years, taking into account maybe Williamsburg, and I guess you got to take into account the Williamsburg and the Iroquois contribution to that, if there is, you know, if we're going to look at it that way. But maybe, yeah, I guess, okay. The more I'm talking, the more I'm convincing myself that maybe what I'm saying isn't making a whole lot of sense, because we've got Iroquois and Williamsburg in there, so we got to pay their share back. But what Mooresburg has contributed into that RSL fund, I'd like to see that number over, you know, if that's a possibility.
Well, I'm going to ask Sarah, just to clarify, so the RSL contribution was technically a loan from the fund, and then we pay it back over time with connection fees. Is that correct?
That's correct. And to Councillor Mellon's question, so how the RSL money, how we would have it allocated, it's like 60% to Mooresburg, 30% to Iroquois, and 10% to Williamsburg.
But then again, I I understand where Councilor Mellon's coming from, and that'll be the debate that we'll have to have if we go to the point that we'll entertain the Swanks proposal, and then staff will look at it and see where they can fund it and how they would fund it. But I agree with staff that I'm not prepared to take RSL money and put it in a pumping station. It's no different than a user fee. We can use it as a loan tool if we think it's the right thing to do. And we would charge interest to that loan from that loan over. But to take that user money and put it into a pump station, I don't think it's no different than just taking their money out of their pocket every month and paying off the debt. So we can have that debate when we figure it out, but we need to be cautious on that too. I think we put it into the water towers. That made sense because the users are getting the benefit mainly from what was going on the water towers due to the way the structure works. But growth needs to pay for growth. We're in a dilemma. Like I've talked to Mayor Fraser up in North Dundas, and they're sitting on millions of dollars of development fees, and great for them. It says that it hasn't hurt them, but we in South Dundas have always been hesitant on doing development fees, and this would have been an instant where development fees could have been used to help growth pay for growth. But we're stuck in trying to figure out how we can make growth pay for itself out of our own little pocket. So it's something like us, we'll make it work. We just got to be a little bit more creative because of what the situation we're in. So, Councilor Wells, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just like a comment for the RSL money is it's not a reserve. It's profits that we're making off the utility company. We're reinvesting it in mutual funds or whatever we're investing in. So like right now, that money actually belongs to the municipality. It's a profit that we made. So I have no issues taking all that money, because if you take the business point of it, where you're taking that money, we're not making any returns on that, our investment right now, and whatever Ontario Infrastructure is charging us like 1.5% or whatever it is, we're actually making money by using that money. That's the way I would look at it, because it's that RSL money is not a reserve. It's not something we put in every year. It's just what we make profits off that utility company. So it's not a reserve. It's an investment. So where you take your investments and you can invest in something else that's going to save you money at the end of the day. That's the way I would look at that, to utilize that RSL fund myself. So, but again, we'll we'll come to a vote on it and go from there. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, just for clarification, the RSL money's in reserve fund, how much? We're just collecting bank interest off that money?
That's correct.
And the interest, what are we accumulating right now, interest rate wise?
We're about 0.85.
Okay, so into what Councillor Wells is discussing, do we borrow from that piggy bank instead of borrowing for 2.5 or whatever we end up paying for it? But I'll leave. I think council's direction right now is we have to come up with a different creative solution to the pump station and how we're going to finance it. We can work with the numbers that we work with Swank, and then we can come with that. Yes, Sarah.
So we will need some more direction from council as to how you want to proceed with funding with the pump station. So we can go through Ontario infrastructure. My caution to council right now is that we are basically at our comfortable limit for debt. And we need to consider that we have the landfill coming down the pipe in a year or two that we'll have to make some decisions on. More than likely that will need to be an infrastructure loan. So that will definitely put us over our comfortable limit. And in speaking with our auditor, Jamie, it will put us over where he would put us in a solid financial position. So we need to be careful of that. So council can proceed with the Infrastructure Ontario loan if that's what you decide. The other option too is the RSL funds. We do have some extra RSL funds that we could leverage to put towards the pump station. And then we can decide on the interest rate and the payback if we wanted to use connection fees or however we decide. But there's also going to be those years where there's a shortfall between the connection fees and the loan payments. So we're going to have to come up with a strategy, whether it's rate increases to make up those shortfalls over the years of this project. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that right now. Yeah, so we just need more direction from council as to how we want to proceed with paying for this pumping station now.
Okay, so we're going to spin a lot of wheels here. I think what we need from you, Sarah, and the department is mainly you is come back to council with a new report. You heard that we are concerned. You put in that report, and let's just deal specifically with the pump station, how we're going to finance it, and come up with the best creative solution you can come up with. And then we as council will decide and give us all the pros and cons. Understand what you're saying, and our debt level has increased a lot in this term of council. Some of the debt's been good. Some of the debt's is debt that no council would ever like to do, but had to do, and that's the landfill cover. And we got more going on. And as Deputy Mayor Gardner said, we came into this term knowing that we would have a lot to do. I think each and every one of us are astounded by how much we have to do. And not only is the pressure on you as treasurer, the pressure is us on council too to come up with solutions that make sense, short term, long term. We're not here to put us behind the 8 ball, but we're going to use your expertise and come up with a solution that makes sense for us in South Dundas, especially on this project. And I think there's a combination of you using, what we have to do, look at all the tools, look at reserve funds, come up with something that makes sense that we can pay back with connection fees over the long haul. I know that, it takes time, and I'm sure that if Swanks had their way, they'd have the first phase already up and well sold. And things would have to change significantly for them not to have a good run at this. Unless, and 20 years is way too long. I'm hoping that in the next 10 to 15, that whole thing fills up and more gets built. So I'd rather be on the optimistic side, but be cautious in how we would deal with the funding. But as for rate increases, I think council's not happy with the double hit. So we got to come up with a solution that still covers what we need, still reserves what we need to do for a short-term future, but or we need to phase it in over time, because it's second lockdown, as everybody imagines, is not going to be good on businesses, and we still need to look after them. Somehow, some way, we'll get through it. We'll get through it as staff and council, but we need to come up with a better solution on that. We're not going to do it today either. I don't expect it today. I think that's going to be another meeting, another time, whether it's part of a regular council meeting or we have a special meeting to deal with it, we can do so. Anything further from council on that? Okay, Sarah, is that something that you can work on and make happen? Because that's the direction we like to go.
Yep, I can come up with something.
Okay. So anything else on the Morrisburg sewer budget specifically other than the pump station? The only thing I will comment to staff, and it will take some digging, and Danielle's probably the right person to do it. There was a lot of sewer lining done in the village of Morrisburg between 2010 and 2014 as part of a relining project that we had funding for. I know that our former CEO was deeply involved with it at that time, so we have to have records on something. AECon was the consulting engineer that did all that work, so there's got to be records somewhere to give you an idea of the work that was done. And if there's more work to be done, fair enough, but it would save you a lot of, if you think there's something wrong, at least it'll give you some background of what was already done. If there's nothing else on the Morrisburg sewer, it's 10:42. I'm going to ask, I'm going to do a 10-minute recess right now, and then we'll deal with Iroquois and Williamsburg. So 10-minute recess, please.